Yeah, there's a different kind of battle in Ligue 1, the French Prem, between the American owner of Olympique Lyon and, well, the rest of the footballing firmament.
All of them.
Yeah.
I'm taking on all comers.
Well, you might
it's a Royal Rumble.
Let's get ready to rumble, then. You might want to explain the background to this.
So, regular listeners will be familiar with John Textor, the head of Eagle Football, his multi-club conglomerate, which also owns Botafogo, Molenbeek, and a bit of Crystal Palace, although not the right amount for him to actually make any decisions, which is why he's selling his shares. But yeah, Lyon is big club in Europe at the moment. And of course, Lyon have had lots of financial problems. There are two ways of looking at this. One that, as Textor puts it forward, is that they just don't understand the multi-club model here.
Oh, the French.
The French football authorities don't understand the multi-club model. And more specifically, the DNCG, which is the French Financial Control Board, which is quite strict, doesn't understand it. And then the DNCG's perspective would be, you don't understand how French football works. And surely it's for him to fit into the league rather than the league to fit in with him. But anyway, this has produced all sorts of problems. Lyon had a transfer, not transfer ban last year, transfer restrictions last year. It had to be like one in, one out. They look like they got past that. They got past a dreadful start to last season, 7 points from the first 12 games, and remarkably qualified for the Europa League at the end of the season. On the pitch, it's looked much better this season, but off the pitch, Textor and French football still don't see eye to eye. Now, we go back to November, and Lyon were given what's known as an administrative relegation. So they were told they would be, regardless of their sporting performance, the club would be relegated to Ligue 2, second tier, at the end of the season if they don't fill the gaps in their accounts. Then they were given a transfer ban for January as well. So what does John Textor do for this? Well, he goes to the DNCG for an appeal this week, an appeal against the transfer ban for this month, because they can't appeal against the administrative relegation because, well, it's not a punishment yet. They're not relegated now. They're saying, if you don't sort it out, this is what will happen further down the line. So there couldn't be any appeal against that. The DNCG, unsurprisingly, throw this appeal out. So John Textor goes on Rotten Sans Flamme, which is a radio programme on RMC presented by Jerome Rotten, as the name would suggest, formerly of PSG and Monaco. And he just used it as a means to settle all his scores with the DNCG, with Vincent Lebrun, the league president, and Nasser Al-Khelaifi, his arch enemy, who is, of course, in charge of PSG. Some of the language he used and phrasing he used was quite extraordinary.
In French or English?
No, all in English.
Doesn't sound as bad.
There was an interpreter who was writing so hard his hand was falling off as he was doing it. I think he got through about 7 pens, and even Jerome Rotten, who's never lost for words, was lost for words.
It's the most American thing ever. Me and you's both into US sports, and we know if a franchise has maybe lost a few games in a row, the owner always ends up going on like a fan channel or a fan radio and just like really, really going for it. And this was the most American owner thing ever, basically, from Textor.
This isn't lost in translation, by the way. No need for a translator here. John Textor described the LFP boss, Vincent Lebrun, that you mentioned a moment or two ago, Andy, as the PSG chief's lapdog for failing to stand up to the Qatari during a crisis meeting with club owners about the league's disastrous media rights auction. That media rights auction, we're going back to, as you well know, David, we're going back to perhaps, one of the sort of calamities of French top flight football now. They did this media deal with a TV company that reneged basically on what they'd, and as far as I understand it, Al-Khelaifi is getting the blame for that media deal. So it's on PSG to a certain extent. But nevertheless, why would an American owner of a French football club want to pick a fight on the authorities in this way?
He thinks that French football has been run in a bit of a medieval way, I think. He was really pro this league pass sort of situation where you paid a certain amount of money a month, you got all the games and what have you, rather than it being a big package, which again is a very Americanized one, like kind of like NBA League Pass, where you can buy a subscription just to watch your team, or you can buy a whole one where you watch the whole league. And I think Textor wanted them to modernize in that way. Al-Khelaifi wasn't so forthcoming on that idea. It was
to put it mildly.
Obviously, he was backed by the powers that be. So Textor is kind of, that's how he's got his being in the bonnet. He's kind of like, oh, right, is this how things go? Eh? Is it Al-Khelaifi calls the shots and what have you?
But I guess that's the thing, because I think it's not unreasonable to say that Textor is a bit of a loose cannon, but at the same time, to say that there is clearly a conflict of interest when the main media rights holder, being sport, is ultimately owned by the same as the league champions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem. I mean, Textor's argument was that really Nasser Al-Khelaifi bullied the league into accepting what was quite a low offer from DAZN and to sneak in some Qatari Tourist Board sponsorship, which no one signed up for, and the league signed off for on their behalf. But this is different to Lyon's situation. I don't think that should obscure that. Now, whatever you think of the way that the DNCG runs things, that is the way they run things, and I think you have to find a way to exist in that. And, we've had situations before. Remember, if we go all the way back to 2003, 2004, when Didier Deschamps was in charge of that brilliant Monaco team that got to the Champions League final, they were relegated at the start of that season and they only got let off it on appeal. And that was a season in which they nearly won the league and that they got to the Champions League final. So, there is precedent for this. And Textor's right to say we're not another Bordeaux, because Lyon own their own stadium, there is money coming in and all the rest of it. But the rule's very clear. It's not about future financial projections with the DNCG. It's like, what have you got now? What he's singularly failed to grasp as well, is that by going out there on this like media offensive against the French football authorities, what are they going to do? They're going to react by leaking a load of stories. Like 12 hours after this came out, sources at the league managed to tell L'Equipe that there's a 175 million hole in Lyon's finances. That's the amount that they've got to make up. Now, it's not as bad as it sounds.
The Turkey WhatsApps came out as well. They came out of nowhere. The Rayan Turkey WhatsApps, apparently, about where Textor was going at Turkey's entourage and what have you, and saying their assholes and such. Yeah. And I think Dortmund were in talks with him, and he said, "Oh, you can tell them to fuck off." And so all this came out about all this.
It's mad. He's left himself in a ridiculous position by doing that. And also, when he started this rant on this radio program, he started off by saying, now, as we said, Lyon's appeal against transfer ban was rejected. He said, I just really wanted to have a dialogue with them. I knew they'd reject it. It's like, so basically you're wasting everyone's time just so you can get your point of view heard. And the DNCG have come out and said, well, look, we've given you the rules. We've explained them to you really carefully. Can you possibly meet them? Funnily enough, we don't think of Marseille as being the place where you get like balance and calm from. But I think the most sensible words about this so far have been from Pablo Longoria, the president of Marseille, who said, I agree with a lot of what John Textor said, particularly about the rights issue. But essentially, to have a good faith relationship with the authorities and to have a smoothly running competition, you have to have a bit of respect for the people who run it. And I think that's fair to say. And he also pointed out that, I mean, on an extraordinary Wednesday for Lyon, they signed a World Cup winner in the morning in Thiago Almada, and then got knocked out the Coupe de France by a fifth-tier team in early evening. But the thing that Longoria drew attention to is, like, it's not about not understanding the multi-club model. It's about fully understanding the implications of it. Yeah. Because they've got a transfer ban, for example, but they've managed to sign a World Cup winner because, of course, he belongs to another one of the Eagle football clubs. So they've loaned him for free, a World Cup winner for free from Botafogo, and because he's being paid less than Maxence Caqueret, who they've just sold to Como, they're fine to get him on the wage bill. Now, if we're talking about good faith, I mean, I think Longoria's got a great point here. That they're able to do that is pretty outrageous. If you go back to last year when they had transfer restrictions on, they weren't allowed to take on more wages, Lyon, but they were allowed to spend. There wasn't any restriction on the amount of, or there wasn't a huge restriction on the amount of money they could actually spend on players. So what did they do? They, rather than signing Douye Chaleta Sarr full time, they got him on an initial year loan. He's now their player. But what they did is they paid Southampton a loan fee for Southampton to pay his wages for the season. So Lyon didn't have to stick them on their accounts.
Yeah, they're bending the rules at the very least, if not undermining them.
And I think the most annoying aspect of all this is he did have some very good points to make, but it was the execution of which that was wrong. I think he's absolutely right. You won't find anyone who will disagree with when I say that, you know, it is strategically catered towards helping PSG and making sure that they're a force in French football for Ligue 1 and for them to, you know, be stronger on a European stage as well. It absolutely is. There's no denying that. But it's the execution of which, from Textor, that is the issue. And the position that he comes from with the multi-club model.
You see, ignore French football and Ligue 1, not least, at your peril, because there is a lot of drama going on there, off the pitch, if not on it.